New Year's Eve, sending the old year out, ringing the new year in. What does the next trip around the sun have in store? Is there hope for less bloodshed around the world? Is there a way for a political year to bring us together rather than rip us apart? We make the turn to 2024 today, Sunday, December 31st, 2023, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. A very happy new year as we are just 14 hours away now from closing the books on 23 and heading into 24. Nearly a quarter of the way now into the 21st century. Pretty understandable if you look back at 2023 while singing Hit the Road, Jack, and Don't You Come Back, because in a nutshell, there was too much bloodshed over the last 12 months, from Ukraine to Israel to mass shootings in America that we seem unable to quell. Our political divisions have us in full-throated rancor, and that's before the first votes have even been cast in the 2024 sweepstakes. On the other hand, there were quite a few very hopeful, though quieter moments. Some have suggested that we are entering a new golden age of medicine, promising new research into dementia, a new breakthrough treatment for sickle cell anemia. The World Health Organization has for the first time recommended a vaccine for malaria, one of the world's deadliest diseases. The Webb Space Telescope keeps teaching us more and more about the origins of our very existence. Inflation is subsiding, Wall Street at a record, and the U.S. economy is outperforming pretty much every other economy in the world right now. Ahead this morning, our annual look back and look ahead. We're also going to talk with the futurist at the Ford Motor Company about their annual report of the trends that will define the new year. It's all today, New Year's Eve, on Flashpoint. All right, so you're going to miss 2023, or are you ready to kick it in the pants on its way out the door? Let's bring in our roundtable for this New Year's Eve. Nolan Finley is the editorial page editor of the Detroit News. Pollster Steve Mitchell from Mitchell Research is back with us. Portia Roberson is the CEO of Focus Hope. And from WDET in Detroit today, Stephen Henderson. Happy New Year, friends. I'm so glad you all are here. Stephen, let me start with you. There was so much that was... 2023 was bloody, it was contentious, it kind of leads us into an election year rather than out of one, and I'm trying to find a way to find some hope that 2024 we will somehow come together. Can you find a way for that to happen?
I don't have a lot of hope for that. One of the things that I've been thinking about is, when was the last time we had a year that we thought was kind of low-key or normal, quote unquote, whatever normal even means now, right, after the pandemic. But it's been a long time, and it used to be, I used to talk about the kind of cycle of news around here where you have these four-year cycles, right? And the second odd year is always quiet. There aren't big elections. In 23 or 19, 15 was like that. But this has felt like the other years. This has felt like a year in which you had a presidential election, or a mayoral election in Detroit, or a governor's election in the state of Michigan, where people are just really all the time at each other. I don't know.
Steve Mitchell, you always love to think of things in a historical context. When I hear people say, oh, it's just the worst year ever, I think, well, 1863 wasn't great. And you can go through a bunch of, we get rather hyperbolic. But it does feel like we are in a historically crazed time.
Oh, I think we are. There's no doubt about it. You've got two wars raging, one in the Mideast and one in Europe, and you have Chairman Xi saying he is going to take Taiwan, and that is a major problem, and that is going to be of real concern in 2024. So this is not a normal year. This is a very difficult year, and you take a look at what's going on in the country internally. So this is...
And in those kinds of years, is it typical for a citizenry like ours to be at odds with each other over how to proceed? Or is there any way for us to kind of get behind leadership that we feel like can take us through all of this? I guess that's the way I kind of feel about FDR at the time.
You've got to remember that there were decisions made during World War II because he had to face a congressional election in 1942 right after Pearl Harbor. and again back in 1944. So just because you're at war doesn't mean that the country is united behind that war necessarily.
Well, we had all the fights over isolationism and
That's
whether or
right.
not we need to be involved. Portia, give me your thumbnail on 2023.
Well, I lead an organization called Focus Hope, but
exactly.
I'm not sure
That's why you're here. That's why you're here.
Exactly. I agree with Stephen. This has not felt like an off year. This was supposed to be the year that we collectively sort of took a deep breath and got ready for the 2024 year, knowing that that's going to be a very contentious year. It has not felt like that since the very beginning, trying to get a Speaker of the House, and then 9 months later getting rid of that Speaker of the House. Expelling somebody from Congress was an interesting turn of events that nobody, I think, had on their 2023 bingo card. So,
I threw away my card a long time ago.
Yeah, it's pretty much destroyed for all of us. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see whether there is any further divisiveness, which I think there is going to be for 2024 as we see this presidential race shaping up, and then a lot of other things that are contentious for everyone. I mean, I think the conflict in Israel is still going to be an issue, a hot button issue for any presidential candidate. Certainly the war in Ukraine is still going on, and then the economy right here at home is still going to be an issue. So I don't know that there are going to be any real things that are going to bring us together as much as there's a lot that's going to cause us to have a lot of friction.
Nolan, give me your thoughts.
Well, I don't think we can measure this in years anymore. I mean, we are in an era of disruption, and that doesn't start over on January 1st. Tremendous change.
We love to sort of arrange the world in a way that maybe it's not arrangeable. We like to think of it in 365-day periods. That you're right.
We're not going to start some sort of a makeover plan on January 1st. We're not all going to take these problems to the gym and fix them. We, as I said, we're in a period of continuous change politically, culturally, economically, and you mentioned leadership. Always before, when we've been in crisis periods like this, leaders have risen to match the times. So far, no leaders have risen to match the times. The leadership of our country, I think, is woefully inadequate to meet the challenges.
It's hard to find a Lincoln right now, but I like your metaphor of we really need the world needs to get to the gym and try to sort of do its New Year's resolution, right? Stephen, I've talked so many times on this program about the election that no one wants. Mm-hmm. Are we destined for this? Is this how it is? Is it Trump?
You're talking about the presidential election or the Senate election?
Oh, well, maybe I don't want. Yes, I don't want to sound even sure.
All of them. I am someone who doesn't think that this is what the field will be the two front runners, the sitting president Joe Biden and the former president Donald Trump. I don't think that's what our two choices will be in November. I have said for a while that Joe Biden looks to me like somebody who is actually not running. He is saying that he's running, but he's actually not doing any of the things that I would expect a sitting president to be doing right now if they were running. I think there are a lot of reasons that he can't say that he's not prepared to serve another year, 4 years right now. I don't know what the timing of that will be in the new year. My prediction is that it may be at the convention that he says, I can't do this. He's going to decline the nomination. And it would make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons that would take us a long time to talk about. But that's just my read of it. I just don't see him behaving as somebody who is campaigning for another 4 years.
We always, Steve, I know so many people who cover conventions, love to think that, suddenly one is going to not be this highly choreographed, scheduled coronation, but that something dramatic might happen. Stephen's kind of giving us the landscape. Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility, but I think doubtful. I believe that both candidates for president, Trump and Biden, are running for the same reason. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, the power to pardon. I think ultimately the reason that Joe Biden will run is because he can't protect his son if he's not president. And his son is in a great deal of trouble and has felony charges against him. Potentially there's charges against the president himself. You've got Trump, who wants to pardon himself and maybe his family, and Biden, who wants to pardon his son and maybe himself.
That's a very cynical take.
And I'm dead serious. This is exactly where we are. Wow. And that's why I think both will run and why we'll see a Trump versus Biden election in 2024.
Portia, is that where we're headed? Do you?
I mean,
Can you
I
see
think
away? I mean, we're just a couple of weeks away from the first votes being cast in the primaries.
Right.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of speechless at the idea that we're going to choose a president, and our presidential candidates are going to be based on which one can pardon
pardon.
himself
Stay out of
or his
jail.
family members or both. But honestly, yeah, I had hopes of what Stephen said, that perhaps there was a window where we wouldn't have these two candidates, but every day, it's reinforced that these are going to be the two people we have to vote for. Even with this talk about a third-party candidate, I don't think that's going to happen. And so I think we're going to end up with a Trump-Biden 2024.
I would disagree with Portia on that. I think the third-party candidate, if no labels, can score a mainstream, credible
They
candidate.
gotta give us a name, though, before anybody can get excited.
I would agree
right?
with that. I think waiting to the spring's too late. But if both of these candidates melt down by then, if you got Trump walking off to jail and Biden deciding, oh, I'm going to throw this to the convention, I think that helps their chances. I think I agree with Steve. I don't think Biden will run, but I think waiting to the convention for a guy who has established himself as the defender of democracy, cheating Democratic voters of their opportunity to nominate a candidate, I think would be a sleazy move.
Well, really interesting position where we are as we head into this new year, with two states now that have decided that Donald Trump cannot be on the ballot, while California and Michigan have decided he can be, but that's obviously going to be up to the Supreme Court. I kind of gave you all a challenge today because I don't want to be a downer about 2023. I want to know the best thing that you read, heard, saw, or learned in 2023. Stephen, let me start with you.
Well, you sent that note, and I had a hard time coming up with it. So I'm going to talk about something local, and it's something that happened recently. The idea that the M1 Q line, light rail, will become part of the RTA. I think it didn't get a lot of attention when they talked about this at the end of the year. There was a lot else going on. I think that is a tremendous step in the right direction in terms of us thinking about that piece of transit in a regional context, and then thinking more about what comes next and where it goes.
Another thing that didn't get a lot of attention is ridership is up about 60% on the Q line right now, the last that I saw. Portia, give me your best of 2023.
Well, I think, again, I'll agree with Steve, and I think that was huge. I think if we're really going to talk about population growth in Michigan and getting young people to stay here, we've got to talk about regional transit. And so I was really excited to see somebody like Dan Gilbert talk about it in a real context, so that people who have not necessarily been on board will, I think, more likely get on board, since he's saying you can't be a world-class city until you get that. But for me, it was Beyonce this year. It was Beyonce and Taylor Swift. It was women who drove the economy across the world, really.
It really did.
In cities that they went to, women entertainers, and it was a fun moment for me. So I'm going to go with something really easy and simple, but seeing Beyonce in concert was a great time.
Women were large and in charge this year, there's no doubt about it. Steve, how about you?
I was a political science history dual major in college. Always interested in World War II, and had the chance in September to go to Normandy and to see that beach, Omaha Beach, exactly how it looks, and to go to the cemetery where almost 10,000 heroes lie was a very moving and a great experience. And thank you, Susie, for letting me go there.
Travel, I tell people all the time, people worry about how much weight they're going to gain when you travel because of all the food you eat, but most of the weight that you gain when you travel is in your eyes, and I think that's fantastic. Steve, how about you, Noel?
Well, I got a new knee this year, and so after years of hobbling around, thanks to Dr. Weir and Henry Ford Hospital, I'm mobile again, and I'm fixing to get on the pickleball court.
Well, I talked with a couple of emergency room doctors lately, and they're orthopedic guys lately, they're so grateful for pickleball because it's really put them into a lot of business.
But I got to tell you, it's been a great year to be in the news business.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of disruption, of course, lots of crises, but also lots of great journalism in response.
There has been that. For me, I always say this, if you don't love what you're seeing on planet Earth at any given moment, instead of looking around, look up. And for me, every time I see a new set of pictures from the Webb telescope, I am astonished at what we keep learning, half of which I'll admit I don't understand. It's beyond, some is beyond my capacity, but it's also a reminder of our capacity to look up and think beyond the kind of skirmishes we get into here. Gang, thanks so much for being here. Very happy New Year to you. We'll continue with more of the trends for 2024 when we come right back. This is Flashpoint on Local 4. right, it's become a very happy habit here at Flashpoint at the end of every year to check in with the trends of how people are feeling, how they're behaving. And joining me to do that again this year is Jennifer Brace. She is the chief futurist at Ford Motor Company. And I've told you before, it just sounds like the greatest job title in the world.
I fully profess to having the coolest job title ever.
You totally do. We're coming to the end of a year, before we get into the trends report, we're coming into the year where I think there's a lot of despondency. Mm-hmm. We know we're going into what is going to be a brutal political year. Yep. We're coming out of a year where there's been everything obviously going on in Ukraine, on the international front, the Israel-Hamas war. I mean, I think there's a fair amount of despair around us right now. That's not a great way to end the year, is it?
No, it's not. It's not wonderful, but what we see that people are doing in response to that is looking to control the elements in their life that they have more control over and prioritizing themselves. So kind of recognizing that there's a lot of things outside of their control in the world, and it makes them feel kind of almost unstable. But prioritizing themselves gives them that sense of center.
In fact, going back to the coming out of the pandemic, we really start to feel people take a new kind of agency over their own lives. And that definitely continues in your trends report this year. I thought it was fascinating how many people said that they would be willing to take a 20% pay cut in exchange for happiness, basically.
You're right. So 52% of employed respondents around the world said that they would be willing to take a 20% pay cut to prioritize quality of life. I'll be honest, we were shocked at how high that number was.
Right. If you're making $50,000, you'd be willing to take 40 to be happier.
Exactly. So it's a pretty significant pay cut, which tells us how important that priority of quality of life is. Yeah. We also saw people saying that a stressful job simply isn't worth it, and being willing to forego advancements at work if it meant having a job that was more stressful.
And these findings, I think, have massive implications for employers in trying to keep and assemble a trained, fully staffed workforce that's engaged in their work, but trying to keep people on your staff. And especially when we look at the unemployment rate as low as it is, this is a really tough time to be the boss.
It is, and I'll tell you too, that number that people being willing to take the pay cut, our younger generations were more likely to say that they were willing to take that pay cut. Yeah,
well, they were the same ones we saw what we kept calling the Great Resignation, which I still don't even know how that worked, how people were just able to walk away from work. The other thing, almost half said that they are now willing, and I don't know if this is different from times past, but to walk away from what they felt was a toxic relationship.
Yeah, that's another thing that we're seeing. They're not only prioritizing themselves, but they're prioritizing the relationships in their life. So saying if a relationship doesn't feel like it's bringing me good things, if it feels toxic, I want to start cutting that out. I want to create some boundaries. I want to invest in the people around me that bring me joy. We did see that they want more in-person time with people. So recognizing that the after effects of COVID and continuing to have a lot of remote meetings and things like that.
Which is really important because you and I've talked about this last year. We are in an epidemic of loneliness around the world. Yep. So digitally connected, but so disconnected in a personal way.
Completely. So we see people recognizing that, looking for that personal connection. We also see them wanting to connect more with nature, wanting to get outside more, wanting to prioritize that as part of their kind of personal happiness as well.
Which is nice. All of this then plays against one of the things that I found was most interesting. You ask an awful lot of questions, did a lot of research about how people feel about artificial intelligence.
Of course.
And there's a bit of a divide between those who see it as an opportunity and those who see it as a real threat. Yeah. Interestingly, men saw it more likely to be an opportunity than a threat than women.
Yeah, I was surprised. So we asked people lots of questions about AI, but one of the more interesting was what would you trust AI to do for you in the next 5 years, or maybe you're already trusting it to do that? And we asked questions like make travel plans or purchase small items, diagnose mental health, physical health, improve relationships with others. And men across the board were almost 10 percentage points more likely than women to say that they were willing to do that, which I thought was surprising.
Me too. I guess I'll say counterintuitive, maybe. I would have guessed it the other way.
Yeah, and I was curious about it, so I looked a little bit deeper. One of the things that I also noticed about men, they were also more likely to say that they understood. They were less likely to be afraid of AI or say that they don't understand it. So that might be increasing that level of trust.
Yeah. The other thing interesting about how many people, the belief about the jobs that AI is going to either create or dismantle and take away.
That's right. I love it when our data shows some kind of dissonance between what's happening to others versus what's happening to me.
Yes.
And we saw that in AI, where 68% of people said that they're worried about AI creating massive job loss for others. But when we asked about themselves, we were at 39%.
Not so worried.
So, you know, it's going to happen to them, it's not going to happen to me, kind of a perspective. That being said, 39% is not a small number of people being worried about losing a job or some employment
not at all.
to AI.
And that is going to be one of the massive stories that continues to unfold through the next year and beyond. The other thing about the dissonance here, it was interesting, you asked how many people believe that people should be driving electric vehicles. And almost half said, yeah, people should be driving electric vehicles. But only, I believe it was 4% of those that you studied actually do.
That's right. It's a do as I say, not as I do. That being said, we also recognize that a vehicle purchase is not something that most people are doing every year by any means. So we're hoping that difference.
Oh, it's where did you catch them on
hopefully they're on their way. That being said, we're also curious about what are the concerns. We still see concerns about infrastructure. That number hasn't moved much. I can say at the company we've done a lot of work to try and improve the infrastructure, like adding Tesla chargers, for example, and try and increase the number of chargers available. But people are still concerned. Almost 3 out of 4 said that they're concerned about infrastructure. They also said that they want to hear from friends and family, people that they know. They want to hear more about the products from the people that they know. So kind of their trusted circle of confidants, if you will, wanting to see more friends, neighbors, family that have EVs.
I tell my Mach-E story all the time. I still love it. It's the best car I've ever owned. I still love it. More. Lastly, I want the focus on mental health and what people, especially parents, the outlook, the importance that they are putting now on the mental health of their children versus, say, their academic achievement. And this was a worldwide survey. Pretty clear. Yeah,
so 83% of parents agreed that focusing on mental health was more important than academic success, which is really showing how much that conversation continues to be an important part of day-to-day life. And it's really questioning some of the traditional markers of success that we've had over the years.
Yeah, and so it's not just young people saying they would trade money for happiness. It's their parents who would wish that for their children if that's what they need. And
you're absolutely right.
It's always good to talk to Jennifer. Thanks so much for being here, and have a very happy new year.
You as well.
Thanks very much. We'll take a quick break, wrap up things up for Flashpoint right after this. As we close things out for 2023, I, of course, want to thank all of my guests, not just for today, but the guests that I've had all year. But mostly, I want to thank you. For more than 25 years now, Flashpoint has been a part of your Sunday morning, and I am just so grateful for the viewers that we have who are part of the Flashpoint family. Have a great week. Have a great new year. We'll see you next time right back here for Flashpoint.